especially considering Andrew was my brother, it wasn't like a topic that was top of my mind or question set. And so I just kind of said to him, like, hey, I've watched your documentary. It was amazing. I didn't realize that you had, stopped being able to masturbate. I think that's really awful, but also really like intriguing and interesting. You gave me a light bulb moment. And then I asked him, why can't you just use one of the sex toys on the market? All of those kinds of things. And so very naively, I was a bit shocked that like there was nothing that had been designed for people with hand limitations or disabilities, and very naively asked him if he wanted to change that. He probably just as naively said he did. And that was kind of like the startings of this idea.
Hello, c'est Manon de TalQ. Tu l'auras sûrement compris, cet épisode est en anglais et parle de sexualité et handicap. Plus précisément de la start-up Bambin, anciennement appelée Handi, qui a développé le Joystick. Le Joystick, c'est le premier jouet sexuel accessible créé pour les personnes ayant des limitations de leurs mains, qu'il s'agisse d'un handicap, d'une blessure, du vieillissement, de l'arthrite ou de toute autre personne ayant besoin d'un coup de pouce. Il a été conçu par des experts en santé sexuelle, des ergothérapeutes et une communauté de personnes handicapées. Le tout à l'initiative d'Andrew Kurza et Heather Morrisson, qui sont frères et sœurs, lui au Canada à Toronto et elle en Australie à Sydney. 2 parties du monde, 2 décalages horaires bien différents, et donc 2 épisodes parce que je n'ai pas su tout découper. Leur version de l'histoire et leurs différents rôles sont trop importants pour être coupés au montage. Il y aura donc 2 épisodes sur Bambin, une avec Andrew, qui se définit comme un militant queer cripple ou Chief Disability Officer, qui s'occupe surtout du design du produit et du contenu, et Heather, qui est CEO de la boîte, qui est plus dans les chiffres, le marketing et levée de fonds. Leurs 2 témoignages sont complémentaires. Voici l'épisode avec Heather, avec qui on aborde plus le côté business, chiffres, marketing, et c'est tout aussi intéressant qu'avec Andrew. L'épisode avec Andrew est sorti juste avant celui-ci. Pour les personnes non anglophones et qui auraient surtout du mal avec mon super accent anglais, je vous invite à aller écouter et voir l'épisode sur YouTube où vous devriez trouver des sous-titres en français automatiques dans un premier temps et corrigés très bientôt, ainsi qu'un lien vers une retranscription en français. J'espère que ça vous plaira. Très bonne écoute. Hello Heather, thank you for accepting this podcast with me today with a very different time slot. You in Sydney, I guess, in Australia, and me in Paris, in France. So first we can begin with a very simple question. Could you introduce yourself even before Bambin?
Sure. My name is Heather Morrisson. I'm co-founder and CEO of Bambin, and we are creating the world's first line of accessible sex toys.
Okay. And what did you do before that? Because I heard that the idea came up on the beach in 2018 and you began the company in 2020. But what did you do before? Just in the shortly.
Yeah, my background is advertising. So I worked for many years in big and small advertising agencies for big and small brands doing their strategy and creative advertising. And then I also did a smaller stint in innovation strategy as well. So looking at how to help companies and brands develop and create new innovations for their company and also for their target market. So Bambin kind of has definitely pulled on both of those levers and allowed me to still use the skills that I got earlier in my career and then put them to use for the startup.
Yeah, that's okay. That's great. Now I understand better why you're so good at promoting Bambin. So could you tell me a bit more, your version of the story of the creation of Bambin? Because Andrew told me about the story on the beach, and I also learned at this moment that you were siblings. I didn't know. So it's a kind of family business, and it's quite hard to find a good partner in business, but it's also hard to do business in family, and maybe especially more in this industry. So could you tell me a bit of the beginning of Bambin?
Sure. So we Andrew had done a documentary a few years back called Picture This. In it, he talked about his dating and his love life, but also his sex life. And in it, he sort of described how when he was younger, he had the ability to masturbate, but as he got older and his hand dexterity and sort of muscle tightness increased or decreased his dexterity and increased his muscle tightness, he lost that ability. And that wasn't something that I had really ever thought about. And I think for me, that gave me a huge light bulb moment. Similarly, how when I tell people what we do, it often gives them a light bulb moment. Because if you're, if you're not living with a disability and you're not really close to somebody who is, you probably haven't really thought about, how do they masturbate or can they masturbate? You might not have delved too much into that. And so I definitely, especially considering Andrew as my brother, it wasn't like a topic that was top of my mind or questions that. And so I just kind of said to him, like, hey, I've watched your documentary. It was amazing. I didn't realize that you had, stopped being able to masturbate. I think that's really awful, but also really like intriguing and interesting. You gave me a light bulb moment. And then I asked him, why can't you just use one of the sex toys on the market? Like there are so many toys out there. And I just figured one of them would have been appropriate for him to use. And he said, well, look, if I could use the toys on the market, I would just be able to masturbate myself, because both of them rely on fine motor skills, dexterity, reach. They rely on your hands being able to do what you want them to do for a long enough time in a sustained motion. And so too do the toys on the market, right? Like you need to be able to manipulate small little buttons. You need to be able to hold them in place. You need to be able to not have your hands get cramped or tired. All of those kinds of things. And so very naively, I was a bit shocked that like there was nothing that had been designed for people with hand limitations or disabilities, and very naively asked him if he wanted to change that. He probably just as naively said he did. And that was kind of like the startings of this idea.
Okay. But it was maybe strange for you to begin this conversation with your brother, like so many years after your puberty, and you were both grown up adults and with your own lives, and you saw this documentary, and then this topic came up. At the beginning, it was an idea, but it took finally 2 years to really begin the company. Why did you take 2 years? It was for the research, maybe, to...
Yeah. So we spent the first little bit of time, and so when we say like we started the company before 2 years, it's just we didn't go public with our brand until 2020. So it's in those 2 years, like after we had that conversation, we started to do our own preliminary research. Like, was this something that just affected Andrew and the circle that he kind of moved in, or was this a much bigger, broader issue? So we did a lot of our own research, everything from desk research to surveys, etc., within the disabled community to really unpick and better understand how broad the issue was, and also what the biggest barriers were for people. And if we had gone down this route, if we were going to do this, how many people actually like really wanted to solve? Like, did people want a toy that had been designed specifically for them? And so once we had that research and realized this was a big enough need, we then partnered with RMIT University that sits here in Melbourne, Australia. They're in a fantastic sort of tech and design university. And we did more research with them to, first of all, add a little bit of credibility to the research that we'd already done. So they took on quite a large research piece as well to really understand where the barriers were for people, both aided and unaided, in terms of their own self-pleasure, see what else was out there that we might not have been able to find, and if this really was like quite an untapped space, which we found it was, but also to do some case study research with a male and female participant to understand and actually like see how they might use the toys on the market, and how we might be able to start designing some concepts that could potentially overcome the barriers that they were facing with, or the reasons why they couldn't either self-pleasure but also use the toys that were in existence. So off the back of that, we actually did have 4 concepts, which we then tested more broadly with the community and occupational therapists before landing on a key design. So there was quite a bit of work that kind of happened in the I guess, sort of 2 years before we went live with the brand launch, to set ourselves up for success. And we launched the brand in May 2020, just as sort of COVID was kicking off, which was really interesting. But yeah, so there was quite a bit of work that had been done in the lead up to when we felt we were actually ready to fully launch.
Okay, of course. And to pay all this research and the MIT and these study groups, you already had to raise money, right?
Yeah, we had to raise, so we did everything. Any of our own time was obviously just passion funded. But for to work with our MIT and the research groups, etc., it was definitely required a bit of funding. So we initially did a GoFundMe. At this point, we didn't really have much we didn't have much to, other than an idea, and we just needed to see if people would back just the idea itself. So we were able to raise about $15,000 through our GoFundMe. And then we also were accepted into a few accelerators along the way, which gave us a little bit of capital as well. So I think by, virtue of being really resourceful and having small little bits of money come through when we needed them, either from the community or from different investment/accelerator groups, we were able to slowly kind of keep moving forward on a really tight budget.
Okay, so for now, you just raised money once with this GoFundMe and the crowdfunding place and some...
No.
Okay.
Like as in today?
Yeah.
Like today we've only raised money once, or at that point in time?
No, at that point, but...
Okay, yeah.
And so first, and then I guess I think you raised money since...
Yes, exactly. So we had the GoFundMe originally. Then we were accepted into Remarkable Tech Accelerator, which is an accelerator that specifically deals with disabled startups or startups working in the disability space. That gave us a small bit of money. We were lucky to win an award here in Australia for the work that we had done, which gave us another about $20,000. So no little drops. And then towards the back end of 2020, we released a book which is called The Bambin Book of Love, Lust, and Disability, which really focuses on 50 disabled people's stories around sexuality and dating and relationships and everything, all those taboo topics that seem to kind of be off the shelf, but that we wanted to give light to. And a voice to. And so that book we developed on a very shoestring budget, but then every dollar that we made selling that book has been put into product development as well. So it's just looking at, small little tactics that you can do to keep the lights on, and then keeping your budgets as small as possible, looking at how you can, potentially get people to work with you on different terms or lower budgets than they might otherwise do. And I think one of the great things about working for a social enterprise is that people generally, they do want to help, and most people, if they want to be involved in what you're doing, will look at how they can do so at, a slightly different rate or different understanding, because if what you're doing really speaks to them, then it tends to bring out like the best in people, which we've definitely benefited from. We've had a lot of incredible people work with us that we would never have been able to pay their normal rate. But because we're doing something that they really believe in, they were lovely enough humans to give us their time and talent.
How many people are you now in the team?
It's myself, it's my brother, it's one other person part-time. It's very small.
Okay. Because I wanted to ask you also how you are about, or you are already thinking to promote and to sell your product, because I guess you won't sell your product only, or even maybe not in sex shop or love shop. Maybe you need to go to hospitals or medical centers, medical suppliers to target your markets. And it's two full-time job, one to raise money, one to keep on raise money, and another one to keep doing the research, and another one to find sellers. So how you would do that?
Yeah, it is. And I think the virtue of being a startup is you end up wearing all the hats all of the time. And
Yes.
obviously, you bring people in as and when you can, and you lean heavily into your advisors and your coaches for advice. But ultimately, you end up looking at, what can you do today, and how can you keep moving things forward? But with the understanding that you're not a robot or a superhuman, and sometimes you have to put one ball down so that you can pick another one up. And if that means that ball has to stop dribbling for a few weeks or whatever while you get another one going, then that's just kind of the nature of the business at the moment. So we are, our original strategy was very much direct to consumer, especially in this first run of toys, because our margins just don't support larger wholesale or retail partnerships, which look to take about 50% of the margin. We just don't have big enough margins right now because we've got such a small run. So we are mostly functioning direct to consumer. That being said, we have had an outpouring of interest from smaller retailers and sex stores who have said to us, look, we'll reduce our margins to help you get through this first run. And so that we can be able to stock your toy because we really believe in what you're doing. And again, that goes back to, when people really believe in what you're doing, and they want to be a part of it, you can almost always find a way to make that happen. You have to be confident enough to ask people to drop their normal rates or to work with you, and in good faith. What's really beautiful is that we often see people suggest that to us before we suggest it to them. So that's been really lovely and had been an unexpected surprise. And then also we're really focused on working with clinicians like occupational therapists, sexologists, nurses, etc., from a clinical side of things, because we know that they see patients and clients every day, all day, many of whom could potentially benefit from this joystick. So we do have like a pretty robust clinician series going as well.
Okay, these people will be indirectly your sellers because they will talk directly to
Exactly.
the consumer. So it's still a way to be direct to consumer. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, even if these people, they are in the medical field, they know their patient, or other people in sex shop or small love shop, they will be found of your project and they will learn about it. But do you think you need to educate people, to give them maybe training of how the joystick is made, how to use it, how to adapt it to different kind of sex toys, because you can adapt it to many different type of sex toys, if I understood well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
will you do this also to educate your own sellers, or your
Yeah.
a kind of
Yeah.
service after sale, even to your customers?
Yes, absolutely. So we 100% are very aware that that's like 100% something we need to do, not just to on-sellers, but also to customers, because the joystick has been designed for a need that's never been designed for before. So it's not like you look at it straight away and you're like, oh, it's just a vibrator with a hand strap on it, or something I recognize that's been slightly modified to make it more accessible. Because we started from scratch and re-envisioned, threw away all of the convention of what a sex toy needed to look like or needed to be, and started from the beginning, and really were led by the disabled community and their specific needs. When you look at what we've created, like, it doesn't look like anything else. And so for sure, most of the questions we get back, even from like our core community, is like, how on earth does that work? Or like, how do you put the toys in there? Or how big is it? And so like,
Yes,
that's
of
all
course.
really fair.
Yeah, because
But
I mean, I sold a lot of sex toys, so I saw many type of sex toys, and the question was always from people, for the first when they buy for the first time a sex toy, it was always like, where should I put start? Where is the button? Or how should I charge it? Even if it was kind of obvious for me, and when I saw the joystick, I was like, okay, without the video, I was not able to understand. And even with the video, I really, really would like to see it in real, because I want to see how to put toys in it, and how it is strong or soft or comfy, or you need to touch the
yeah,
product to understand it well, right?
Exactly. Exactly right. So yeah, we are creating already like a lot of educational content. We have just launched a series for any OTs and clinicians and sexologists who want to be involved and want to learn more. We'll be doing monthly sessions around the product, but also like when we test it, we'll be hearing from our testers so that they can ask questions directly and kind of get a sneak peek on like our designs and where we're headed, etc. So, and then similarly, we'll run a similar sort of program for people who are our on-sellers in terms of the smaller retailers, but we'll do that when we actually have product that's shipping to them. There's no need to do that.
Of course. Now. Yeah. Okay. And Drew told me that I go back, we were talking about the product itself, but now I'm go back to how to buy it and the money around it, because it's a completely new product, as you said. It's the first time we see this kind of product. So you did a lot of research. So of course it's a bit more expensive than the common toys, and plus people have to maybe to add the toys on the joystick. So he told me about maybe you will negotiate with some insurance or healthcare company. I don't know how to say in English exactly, but to have people to pay the joystick. How do you do that? How is it in Australia? It's in Canada, because it's completely different in every country actually.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you begin? Do you have already a strategy about that?
Yeah, so in Australia, we have something here called the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS, which allows people to pay for it gives people a budget, allows people to pay for different things. And obviously everybody has a different budget. And so one of the things that people can pay for and already are using their NDIS funding for are different types of sexual health and wellness products like sex toys.
Sorry, but they are already helping people to pay for sex toys?
Yeah, we've already had about 15 people use their NDIS funding for the joystick in Australia.
Really? Okay. Yeah. That's okay. So it's not a taboo for this kind of insurance. I mean, they understand.
It is, but it's not like you go around banging a huge drum saying, "Hey, everybody, look over here! We're using it for sex toys."
Yeah, of course, but
you
still
just kind of work within the structure. All of our invoices very clearly state that it's also assistive technology, so we really removed the sexy language from our invoices. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're managing their money or working with a plan manager who is, then they have a lot more discretion over how they spend their money. Now, if they're working with they're not under one of those sort of premises and they're working more closely with the NDIS managers, then you're not actually able to do it. So as long as it's about 70% of people who are on NDIS funding in Australia will be able to leverage their insurance funds to pay for products like the joystick.
Okay, so they don't say exactly what it is. They just say it's something for my health, and they don't need to justify what they buy with
as long as it's under a certain price point. So as long as it's not over $1,500, no one's coming to look. And our product runs at $250. That is actually in line with a lot of the really high end toys. We've not sacrificed anything in terms of design or quality, and we don't want to. And because we're doing a short run as well, as I mentioned before, that price point is just the most feasible so that we can keep the lights on, basically.
Yeah, okay, but your project has been approved by this kind of insurance, right?
Yes. Yeah. No.
Okay, so
no, you didn't.
They don't need to check. No. Okay, they don't need to check that it's something related to health, like to sexual health. Okay.
Yeah, no, we don't need to, which is great. So it just gives us a lot more freedom, or people hear a lot more freedom, and it's not a perfect system in terms of how to sort of tap into their discretionary funding. In the UK, there is a similar system there as well, which is like your personal health savings or personal health account, something like that, which again, you're able to tap into your discretionary funding as well. And we're still investigating other countries. The US is no big surprise, does not have an insurance fund that helps people with disabilities. So that's a much trickier area for us to sort of navigate. And we're still digging into what the opportunities are there.
But even in France, where we are supposed to have the best, health insurance, national health insurance, I'm not sure it will be that easy for you or for this kind of project. So if it was that easy in Australia, it's great. But I hope it will be the same in France when you will come
Me
to the
too.
market. But yeah, but I'm very surprised that they didn't ask any justification. But okay. So for now, it's okay in Australia. It's okay in UK, and you already sell in other countries.
Those are the first two countries that we're really focusing on. Like, we're a small team, so you really need to be quite
Of course.
choiceful in terms of where you want to go. But yeah, we're always sort of keeping our ear out so that we understand what the structures are. But what we're doing right now is testing this here in Australia, and we'll also test it in the UK and sort of see what learnings we can get before moving towards other countries.
Okay. Another topic, again, sorry, I'm always mixing all my questions
That's
in my
okay.
topic. Another topic, how did you think about the marketing, the promotion, the tone of voice you wanted to give to first Handi and then Bambin? Maybe why did you change the name? Maybe it's just a question of copyright. I don't know, but how did you think about all this branding?
Yeah, we look, a lot of times when it comes to disability, like in any category, a lot of the conversation can be quite like sterile, quite straight, quite scientific, maybe a bit boring. And certainly when it comes to sexuality, because everyone's always so worried about tiptoeing around the issue because it's taboo, things become even more clinical and sterile and sort of black and white, and it kind of loses a lot of that like fun and that play that's supposed to be inherent in sex. Like, sex should be fun, it should be playful, it should be sexy, it should make you feel good, it shouldn't be cold. And so when we were thinking of our brand and our branding, we really wanted something that could elevate beyond where the most conversations were happening, and especially from like providers, and really like lean into the nature of what sex should feel like, and the emotions that it should give you. And so our brand is very fun and playful. We try to leave people with a bit of a wink and a smile. We're a little cheeky. We lean into topics that are taboo, but we do so in a way that always has a bit of an uplift. So even if we are, talking about a topic that's quite serious, we look for ways to leave people feeling good and feeling happy, and because that's ultimately how you should feel when you're thinking about sex, and that's how we want people to feel coming away from our brand. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that, and we've given up on different like articles or posts, etc., or topics that we just felt, this just isn't quite right for us. So we've always been really choiceful around like, well, which topics and conversations do we feel are right for our brand to get involved in, and then how can we make sure that even when we're delving into really serious topics, we can do so in a way that still stays true to our brand tone of voice and our personality.
Okay. So
and then in terms of the name change, did you want me to touch on that?
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you if you're the only one behind, the marketing and the branding, or maybe you got the help of an agency or just maybe a freelance or whatever.
Yeah. Well, my background, because it's advertising.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
I from a strategic point of view, like putting together the brand tone and the strategy behind it was something that was led by me. In terms of the actual visuals, we worked with an amazing, very small agency called Luca in Australia, and they were responsible for all of the visual branding, etc., around the original brand, the Handi brand, but also like we've retained a lot of that like visual styling, etc., which carries us through. I am responsible for all of the copy still to date, but we've also got, Andrew does write quite a few things. He also oversees everything from a lived experience perspective, and we've got some freelancers helping us more with respect to the actual execution of the marketing. So like the website builds and all that kind of stuff, the posting, etc. So yeah, it's definitely a team effort. We all kind of like look at where our skill sets are and put them, and put them together. So it's probably a smurge of all of us.
Okay. Yeah, I know for the content that Andrew was behind almost all the content, but yeah, for the visual and all the image, it's something else. So, okay, and for the change for the name, when you changed your name, was it a simple question of copyright, or was it also a question of being more inclusive and more maybe joyful or something like that?
It was 100% a result of a trademark issue. So we realized that, or were made aware that the Handi trademark was owned in the same category globally, and if we wanted to expand globally, it was going to cause us quite a bit of issues.
Okay.
Yeah, I was Handi with a Y, and we, very green when we first set the company up. I was like, Handi with an I, that totally gets us around the trademarking issue. It doesn't for anybody thinking about starting a company. A different spelling does not get you around the trademarking issue. Please learn from my terrible mistake. And so we unfortunately, we thought maybe we'd be able to coexist. Their founders were quite adamant that we change the name, and fair play to them. They did legally; they were in the right. And so we had no choice really but to explore a name change. It wasn't something that we wanted to do. It was, especially as like a branding expert, it was incredibly painful because we really needed to land something that carried forward all of the beautiful meaning that we had put into and created around Handi, but also set us up for the future and where we wanted to go. We needed to find something that wasn't owned already, that wasn't too crass, that was gender fluid, that was still cheeky and fun. There were so many parameters. And it took us probably 3 months of like lists and lists and we brought in other people externally to be like, okay, where could this go? And, eventually we landed on something that we, at first didn't hate and then eventually came to actually quite like, but it was a real process. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was really hard.
But so how did you find Bambin? Because is there a meaning? Maybe it's because of my English. I don't really get it. I get the sounds. For me, it's very it sounds like a ball or something like fluffy or like a toy. Like just not a sex toy, but just something. A nice toy, just the name of a brand of a new object, but maybe there is a meaning behind, and I don't get the word because I'm not English native.
No, that's okay. Well, actually, I was on a call with one of my good friends, and we were at this point. I had gone through months of this. That we had so many potential lists, and I'd narrowed it down to a few that I kind of liked. And we got on the phone call just for a half an hour chat, and I was like, oh. She also comes from a marketing background. And so, in this conversation, she was like, look, this word just popped into my head. She's like, I'm not sure it's really right. But it's bump. And I was like, that's interesting. I was like, well, bump takes me straight to pregnancy land. So for me, bump wasn't going to be quite right. But then we started to talk about bump in grind and bump in uglies. And there was something really interesting in this word, bump in. And it because it also has a little apostrophe in it, it immediately had bringing two things together. There was a bit of play that kind of came through quite naturally from it. And from a language point of view, we could start having quite a bit of fun, and you could just kind of see how we could have fun. And also in terms of our mission, we are bumping the barriers that stand in the way of sexual pleasure, whether that's your hand limitations, whether that's the taboos that sit around the conversations. We want to bump those out of the way so that people can get to things that, they can get to play. So yeah, we've actually found that there was a lot of nuance in this word bumping, and that we felt we could carry that forward. And so I think one of the lessons of this too is that words, and especially brand names, mean what you make them mean. So we started with something that could that was a bit raw. It didn't come with a ton of meaning already, which was probably a good thing that we could then start to build meaning into. But yeah, it was a total journey. And yeah, be happy with where we landed, but I wouldn't
No, but
want to go through it
it's a
again.
great name. I mean, just even the sounds, even if we don't get, as a foreigner, or the meaning you put behind at the first sight, just the sounds already is, I don't know, it's joyful. So, and it's what you
That's
want
such a
to.
cool insight. Like, I hadn't actually considered like just the pure like phonetics of the word. I think that's a really awesome insight that like there's this like, because I guess like
I
one
don't know
of
in other
the
languages, but
yeah.
I can tell you for French and Japanese, I'm half Japanese, so I didn't
Oh,
think
cool.
about that in Japanese. So maybe, but in French it's okay. In Japanese, I don't know,
Yeah,
but yeah,
very cool.
yeah. Okay, thank you. What else I wanted to ask you? I also, yeah, two questions. I also already asked Andrew about that, but I wanted your point of view because for him, it was so natural to answer to this question, but maybe not for you. I don't know. It's the first time, not the first time, but almost the first time I see a project in the sex tech industry, which is branded in a gender free, gender neutral way. It's it's not easy to do marketing without putting gender on your ads and stuff. Of course, we cannot do a lot of ads in the sex tech industry, but still, to do your persona, to do how to target, to know how to target, it's not easy. So how did you choose that? Of course, maybe it was obvious for Andrew. Was it obvious for you? And then how do you market, how do you promote a project which is genderless in a world which is completely binary?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we like when we first started the design process, we had the same question, right? Like, which male penis or vulva owners, which one are we going to go after first? And if you look at the sex toy industry, it's dominated by female purchasers. But that's because, as one of our researchers said, guys can just go have a wank. It's a lot easier. It takes less time. It's a lot easier for us if we have a little bit of a vibration. And also, there's not as much stigma that sits around using sex toys for women. It's almost kind of like natural now, whereas with men, there's still a little bit of a stigma around that. So if we, but in this case, guys can't just go have a wank and they need help. And so while there still might be a stigma, it was kind of, we always had this kind of like, well, we don't actually know, we can't actually go based on previous category data, which subset, which gender, in air quotes, is going to actually be the biggest purchaser. And so with the design that we've got today with the joystick, in its earlier iterations, when we tested it with people, it was originally designed for vulva owners. But when we tested it with people, every guy or penis owner that we tested it with was like, yeah, but like I could totally use that because either I really like vibration as well, and so I don't need to or can't actually insert. Or like if you just put a penis sleeve in there, then or a male masturbator, then I can totally use that too. And so it's a huge, amazing. This is why you research and test things with people, because you get these beautiful insights. And it was a huge opening up for us that we could actually go to market with one toy and one design that would actually potentially fit and work for across genders. And I think yes, we do live in a binary world, but that is changing. And particularly when you look at the disabled community, there's a lot less of that binary mindset because of their lived experience. So I think for us, it was an awesome opportunity to go to market with one design. We just drop gender as much as we can from any of our comms. It is very much for everyone. And because the product has been designed to be so versatile, there's you can use tons of different types of toys with it. You can bend it in all sorts of different ways. Like whatever your lived experience is that you're coming at, there should be a way to sort of make it work for you. And whether you're a penis owner or vulva owner, whether you like vibration, whether you don't like vibration, whether you want to have something that can penetrate or be penetrated or not, you've got those options to play around with. And, we kind of say whatever gets your rocks off, that makes us happy, no judgments.
Yeah, of course. Okay, super clear. Thank you. And actually, about that, you have so many choices of toys you can use thanks to the joystick. How will you do it? Because at the beginning, of course, you cannot launch everything at the same time. So you launch the joystick, but then people have to buy, or they already have a sex toys at home. Will you do some maybe partnership with sex toys brands, or you prefer to create your own toys in the future, or you don't know, or you don't want to answer to this question now?
No, that's okay. The answer is both. So in this first instance where we're launching the joystick adapter, which works with the other toys, we are already working with the likes of Love Honey and Wow Tech, which are pretty massive brands and have a huge section of different types of toys. We're also working with a smaller but pretty amazing brand called Normal here in Australia. And we're also working with Hot Octopus. So what we're doing right now is we've been sent basically like a whole trunk full of different types of sex toys from these brands. We are testing them when we get our prototypes from China. And so we'll be able to give people a good understanding of the toys that we've tested that work well. And then, we know, because we've been really snoopy in people's bedrooms over the last couple of years, that most people, like a lot of people, have bought toys, paid good money for them, thought they could work, got them home, realized, okay, for whatever reason, this doesn't quite work for me. And so the hope is that you don't need to necessarily go out and buy fresh toys. You can, obviously, if you want to, but actually tap into or breathe new life into some of the toys that you wanted to try before, but maybe they were too heavy, maybe they were too clunky, maybe they just didn't quite work for you, you couldn't quite keep them in position, etc. So hopefully that really helps with that as well. And then just thinking about our future, we are already developing our own vibrators and sleeves that have big buttons or hyper accessible, etc. And they will actually fit within the joystick adapter as well, but they'll also be able to be used on their own. That's kind of phase 2. Once we've kind of gotten through this first phase of adapter and sort of are on good footing with that, then we'll pick that project back up. So probably in a year or two, we'll be able to launch those as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah, because even if you put sex toys from other brands, the problem will still remain with the problem of too small buttons, or
Exactly.
So first you have to ask to a care worker, and then it's less awkward, but you still need to ask help to put the normal sex toys, I want to say, or the common sex toys into the joystick, and then you can use it privately. But
for some people, so it depends on your, like, when you think of disability, especially that affects their hands, like, it's such a humongous spectrum. So we know that in some cases people can turn the buttons on and off. Where they have trouble is keeping them in place. They have trouble with reach. They have trouble with their hands getting tired or sore, etc. And so for those people, this is actually a great solution. But to your point, we know that's not going to fix the problem for everyone, which is why there kind of needs to be that second add-on of those really accessible big buttons, etc. And then people can kind of pick and mix what works for them. Some people might say, I actually only need the adapter. That's great. Some people might say, well, actually, I need like the full suite, both of the products together. And other people might say, well, actually, I only need like the really big buttons because that's the biggest problem I have. So it's just about giving people as much choice and option to fulfill their needs as we possibly can, really. And we've always looked at, well, how can we make this as versatile and functional for people as possible?
Okay. Great, thank you. Then some last questions. Since you began your entrepreneurship journey, and especially in sex tech, can you tell one big issue or obstacles or something you faced to?
Sure. I mean, we covered one of the biggest ones, which was definitely the name change. That was a really hard pill to swallow. And, since we've launched the pre-sales in December, our pre-sales haven't been going as quickly as we thought they would for a number of different reasons. Pre-sales are tricky, I think, probably at the best of times, because people are looking for that social proof. They want to see the product. They want to see that it works. And for us, we need that. Those pre-sales are really going to drive our ability to actually go into manufacturing. So we're caught in this little bit of a catch-22. where, once we have the products, then people get them, then we get the social proof, and other people see they're working, and everyone's happy days. But you actually need, in hardware startups, you actually need, significant investment to be able to get to that point and actually get these products into the world. And so right now, what we're really working through is, how can we sell out this first run? And admittedly, the pre-sales have been going a little bit slower than we would have liked, because there's this hesitancy to, take a punt on something that people aren't 100% sure if it will work for them. In addition to that, or sort of like part and parcel to that, is that we were meant to have prototypes for testing already, and COVID, whatever wave we're currently in, is it like 5.0, is royally screwing us at the moment, because all of Shenzhen, the entire city of Shenzhen, has shut, which is where a lot of manufacturing production happens in China, is totally in lockdown, and we don't know when they're coming out. So it is not ideal. And so right now we're kind of saying, okay, like, what's our plan B? What can we do? Do we need to halt on some other things until factories come back online? And I guess, like, at least, we're not the only ones who are falling victim to this. This is probably having, and most certainly having, a massive effect globally, because we're so reliant on China, particularly this one region, for so much of our manufacturing and production capabilities. So that's something that is, new this week, and that we're looking at, okay, what are we going to do to pivot around this? Do we need to pause certain things? How does this affect our timelines? How does this affect
one of
our
your
runway?
biggest issue arrives actually like this week, like not this week, but just this last week.
Yeah, no, this week.
With the coming back of COVID in China. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, COVID. It never ends.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Remember when we all thought it was going to be just like 2 weeks? How beautifully naive we were.
Exactly. Okay, so finger crossed. Then do you have some questions, some cliches that people ask you, and maybe I did, that you don't want to hear anymore? You're upset or you're tired to explain or to answer?
Not really. Like, I think what's cool about what we do is that people come in at all sorts of different like levels and understandings, and we do get asked often a lot of the same questions, but often with like a slightly different nuance. So no, I don't really have, I mean, Andrew probably gets that, Andrew probably has more of a reason to get upset about people asking him like how his penis works in elevators and that kind of thing, but that doesn't happen to me so often. So yeah, for me, like, I think one of my favorite parts of this job is being able to give people the same light bulb moment as I had a few years ago, and watch their face like kind of light up and be like, oh my God, I've never thought about that, but now that I do, it makes total sense. And the more that we can give that to people, the more like awareness we have around it. Because one of the things I've realized, and has been kind of told to me by, people that I've met on this journey, is that none of us knows what happens tomorrow. None of us knows how we're going to age. None of us knows if we're, going to incur disability in the future, but there's a very strong likelihood as we age that we will, because disability and aging go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And I think by the time we're 90% of the population has some form of disability. And so I'm so glad to be able to help people, realize this earlier, and hopefully start to solve the problem before we get to a point where we are incurring a disability ourselves. So yeah, there's not like a lot of questions that people ask that are frustrating.
Great. But it's the same for Andrew, actually. He was super aware to answer to every question, even about disabilities or so. And
cool.
It's thanks to entrepreneurs like you that I understood. And I think really people need to understand that we will maybe all get disabled at one time in our life, because we are getting old and older. And this is something I didn't realize at all. So thank you for that. And then finally, what is the future of sex like for you in your in 5 years, 10 years? You can take as many years you want. What will be the ideal world for better and inclusive sexuality?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of nailed it just in that last bit. I think, the future of sex is accessible. It's open to all. And I think in order to do that, we have to, as a society, shirk some of the taboo and restrictions that we place on our conversations around sexual health, around sexual well-being, around the fact that sexual health and well-being brands can't even talk about sex positivity on social platforms without their content being taken down. I think we all want to believe that today we're living in this much more liberated, sex positive world, and we are. But like, if you just think about a year ago or a year and a half ago when the song "Walk" came out, like that absolutely like broke people went crazy, but we've been hearing about hard dicks from rappers for decades. So I think we're living in this liberal society where we're free to talk about sex, but we're really not. We've got so many social constructs that actually penalize, not just disallow us, but actually penalize us for talking openly about sexuality and sexual health and asking questions that might be awkward or that we don't want to look stupid. But the more that we ask those questions and understand and empathize with different people's perspectives and feelings and needs and break down those barriers by actually having the conversations and being brave enough to have the conversations, then we can move into this more accessible, sex positive mindset. But I think we've got a massive way to go. And so for me, when I think of what I hope the future of sex looks like, it's around accessibility, but that doesn't just mean products. It actually means like accessible to have the conversations, accessible that we don't have to shy away from our sexualities, that we can actually talk openly and positively about it in a society that actually respects that versus condemns it.
Yeah, as I always say, the first problem in me is just to talk about it. So,
totally, 100%. Yeah. If we can just talk about it, this can solve a lot of problems.
First we talk and then we choose which maybe product or service we need.
Yes, exactly. And then we
decide
do.
that
and we play.
Think about that. Yeah, we need to be able to talk and to think about it. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. That's great. Do you want to say some last words about Bambin, project, some, I don't know, help you need?
For sure.
Or
I'll do
whatever.
I'll do a few little shameless plugs. So for anybody out there who thinks that the joystick might work for them, that has any kind of hand limitations, and that can be definitely from things like disability, but it can also be like aging or arthritis, anything that's kind of affecting your hands from or that from doing what you want them to do in that realm. Definitely check out our website. We are in pre-sales, and every pre-sale at this point will really help us get towards manufacturing, which would be great. But also, conversely, if you're somebody who just really loves what we're doing, doesn't necessarily feel that the product is right or necessary for them, but wants to support us, there is a donation mechanism on our website. Happy to take those donations. Every dollar that we make through that donation mechanism actually goes towards funding a joystick or a product or an orgasm for somebody in the community. So we don't take that as a company. We actually put that right back into the community. So happy to take any of those as well. And our website is www.getbumpin.com.
Yeah, but I will put everything on the description, of course.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much, Heather.
Merci d'avoir écouté jusqu'au bout. Si vous avez aimé cet épisode, encore une fois, ça serait super si vous pouviez le partager autour de vous et surtout vous abonner et mettre des petites étoiles sur Apple Podcast. N'oubliez pas également de suivre le compte Instagram TalQ-Universe. Merci encore et à très vite.